Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Joseph Davidson. Joseph is a master's student in physics with philosophy from the University of Lincoln. His area of expertise is metaphysics, with an emphasis on how physics and philosophy interact and how we may build a bridge between them that would be advantageous to us both. Would you please welcome to the stage, Joseph Davidson.
Hello, and Привет, Brayford and Kiev. Today I'd like to talk to you about physics and about philosophy and how the two intersect. This talk might be a little bit complex and a little controversial, so hold on to your hats. So physics, in my mind, has become disoriented. Physics is philosophically confused. While physicists are very good at solving physical problems, physicists tend not to be able to see the bigger picture of what we're really doing in physics, what the scientific enterprise is really about, and what the end goal of physics is. Physicists tend to see the end goal as this attempt to create like a grand unified theory of everything, like a literal description of reality, as opposed to an intuitive understanding of reality. We're not trying to create like perfect models of reality to pierce into this objective world and extract from it literal truths. Rather, we're trying to create intuitive understandings in the same way that like a map is a simplified abstract representation of a territory that's fit for use, that allows us to we can look at a map, we can explore, use it to navigate the world and understand what the world is like. Physics is offering us models that we can use to understand what the world is like. They have predictive power, so we can predict what's going to happen in the world. But this isn't the same as capturing reality perfectly or literally. It's not the same as providing truth, rather it's providing understanding. We can call this scientism. What is scientism? I'm glad you asked. Scientism is an ideology that sort of hallmarks society's relationship with scientific orthodoxy. It reflects when we put science on a pedestal and we have maybe too much confidence in what science is offering, or we take it in a more literal way than perhaps we ought to. This comes from this epistemic position that science is the be-all, end-all, the holy grail of knowledge, that if an idea isn't scientifically validated, it's at best just your opinion, man, or at worst, well, false. There's some central tenets to scientism, this slogan of just trust the science, or even worse, trust me, I'm a scientist. These are phrases that get thrown around every time a government is overstepping into authoritarianism, or some corporation is trying to make billions. And we should be very skeptical and suspicious of entities that make these sorts of statements. And I think it's a hijacking of science more often than not. We should be more in line with physicist Fabien Pelouzon, who said, "Don't trust me, I'm a scientist." Scientific consensus is another tenet worth considering. It's this idea that we should dogmatically follow whatever the scientific consensus on any given issue is, in spite of the fact that every given major scientific advancement or paradigm shift 2060 was a stepping outside of consensus, a pushing against the status quo. Copernicus, when he offered his heliocentric model of the universe, was going against the orthodox at the time. Similarly, when Isaac Newton proposed his mystical invisible forces of gravity, he was pushing against the current consensus. And then with relativity, Einstein pushed against Newton, who by then had become the new consensus. You'd think that given most major scientific theories through history have turned out to be not so much wrong, but replaced by improved ones, we'd be less confident about our present set, but maybe that's a little pessimistic. The crux of this talk we're doing today is this tenet of literalism, this idea that, as we've alluded to already, science offers literal description of the world rather than a narrative or a way of understanding the world amongst alternative narratives. Science isn't trying to offer a literal description of the world. The two key objectives of science are, there's twin objectives. There's the innovation objective. In poetic terms, we can call this mastery of the physical. This is the goal to offer useful technologies and inventions that improve our quality of life and, from Einstein's theory of relativity, we got GPS satellites, which are useful for me because I can't navigate a car park without going on my phone. And then we got the explanatory objective. This has an existential bent about it. We can use science to explain what this world is, what we are, how we fit into it, and this reassures us of our existential qualms. For both of these, intuition is sacrosanct, it's paramount, and other nice adjectives. For an explanation to be valuable, it needs to be intuitive insofar it has to be legible or digestible. To innovate, a scientist must step from the known into the unknown. And to do that, they must know what came before. They must be stepping out of the known, and they must have an intuitive comprehension. In fact, I would argue that for the function of science, insofar as this is achieving these two objectives, we actually tend to value intuition and intuitional interpretations of any given physical phenomena over more literal ones. Wave particle duality is a very good example of this. The basic thumbnail of wave particle duality is that light, and all particles in fact, but light can sometimes exhibit wave-like behaviors, such as in Young's double-slit experiment we see on the right, where light is diffracting out as waves through a small slit, and then twice more through two more slits, creating this dark white pattern on the ends. And then on the left, we see the photoelectric effects, for which Einstein won the Nobel Prize in, I think, 1922, where light is exhibiting particle-like behavior. And this is the only way we can really understand what it's doing. Because light is almost like billiard balls, little photons, packets of energy, and knocking out individual electrons, drawing a current, which we can measure. This is how solar panels work. Again, it's not important to understand the physics. We need to understand there's two possible interpretations we can make of this observation. The first is that the essence of light is just incomprehensible to us. It exists in some objective reality that our minds can't penetrate, and it's neither wave nor particle, but some third thing, and always this third thing. And we just can't understand what it is. On the other hand, we could say light is sometimes a wave, which is intuitionally functional insofar as we know what a wave is. We see waves in oceans and in fields of wheat. And we know what a particle is because we evolved to see the world as a set of individuated items, like we pick fruit off trees. That's like our idea of a particle. This is the interpretation we adopted. It's in the name, wave-particle duality. However, I don't think we're doing this anymore in physics. I think we're actually tending to lean towards more literal interpretations. So I think Schrödinger's cat is a very good example of this. Schrödinger's cat, I think we've probably all kind of heard a little bit about what this is, was actually a reductio ad absurdum, which is a fancy philosophical way of saying a very silly idea. Schrödinger proposed it to show the incompleteness of quantum mechanics, the implausibility that this model of reality actually functions on the macroscopic in our world. While that has great predictive success, it's not a literal version of science. However, in modern physics, we've begun to almost cast to the wayside even basic logical principles in the name of this literalism, because we are generally interpreting this to say reality isn't as it seems, rather than quantum mechanics is incomplete. Quasi-particles are a piece of physics I've worked on a lot. They're these weird little physical entities. They don't really exist, but they seem to exist, and they kind of arise as emergent phenomena in condensed matter physics. The physics, the physical interpretation of what these are is, again, quite a literalist one. It's, we just say in physics it's a mathematical abstraction. Don't worry too much. Just look at the maths and move on. This isn't in line with the objectives of science. This isn't giving us useful explanation. It isn't allowing us to know what the world is like, in essence. So what might be a solution to this? I think metaphysics offers a functional approach that physics can begin to imitate. So metaphysics is this quest to understand what reality was at its most fundamental and create a logically rigorous description of what reality was at this level. Like answering questions like, what is existence? What is and isn't an object? What does it mean to exist? What can exist? Then, in the 18th century, a Prussian philosopher named Immanuel Kant came along and proposed this thing called Kantian idealism, which I think this beautiful piece of art is called The Mask by Rosy Rumia, kind of portrays. It's this idea that although there is an objective reality out there, we, as living beings, have to put on this mask such that we can perceive, and we put on this sensory mask and all these patterns and meaning and colors and light and experience and sensory information emerges, but we can never look back into the objective. We can never look back into this void. Another name for this is epistemic skepticism, a skepticism about our capacity to have knowledge of the world. So we have the perceiver, the perception, but what is the perception kind of behind or above and below it when it's independent of the mind? Just a bunch of atoms, maybe? I mean, what's an atom? Like, how do we describe that? Numbers? Where does a number exist? Just like floating around in some space or something? It's like, it becomes incomprehensible the more you go into it, and the point is our minds can't go there. We have to exist in this world of senses and sensory information and experience. Some people said this killed metaphysics because metaphysics could no longer achieve this description of ultimate reality. In my mind, it actually empowered metaphysics to be what it was from the beginning, just a description of intuition, a description of the world as it seems. And we can sort of remove this perfectionism about physics by just saying that here's a metaphysical framework, here's another one, pick and choose as you will what's most functional for the given situation, rather than saying this is right, this is wrong, this is true, this is false. Physics needs to be doing more of this in my mind. I think I think physics must break free from the shackles of scientism's literalism and utilize this intuition-first metaphysics in order to progress. We need to stop trying to do this grandiose attempt to capture all of reality in a single theory that's positively true, and instead realize that our duty is to just provide a way of understanding the world in the same way metaphysics does. Not only does metaphysics offer an approach, though, it actually offers solutions. We can use metaphysics to answer questions like, how would Descartes' substance theory classify the quasi-particle? How would Leibniz's monadology help us understand quantum entanglement or Schrödinger's cat? This brings me finally to my idea of the advent of this character, the philosopher-physicist. There's two conceptions, either a physicist who is well-read in metaphysics and once he's collected his set of experimental data or devised his mathematical framework, once he's stepping into the physical interpretation, the philosophy part of physics, he thinks back to his metaphysical readings and he uses these very sophisticated and yet never before utilized metaphysical frameworks in order to answer these questions. Or it looks like another thing, two collectives, philosophers and physicists coming together, beginning to collaborate, maybe going for coffee, maybe we move the departments a lot closer on campus. And philosophers can almost become metaphysical consultants onto physicists, assisting in their physical interpretation. We can do three things in this sense. We can rip out this over-evaluation of literalism from the ideology of scientism and see scientism shrivel up and die. And we can then empower philosophers to realize that they're not just playing abstract linguistic word games, but they actually have practical value to offer to the world in their metaphysical sort of work. And finally, physicists can realize and remember their duty towards providing meaningful explanation of the way the world is, and in the same stroke begin to progress and advance physics as a field of knowledge. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Mind